Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down what is probably the single most overlooked step in building a truly great JavaScript application, the plan. We're going to take all that theory about good planning and turn it into a practical, hands-on blueprint you can use to build apps that not only work, but are built to last. So, let's dive in.
So, you've got it. That spark of a brilliant idea. The concept feels crystal clear in your head. The features seem totally obvious, and you can just feel it, right? Your fingers are practically itching to open up that code editor and just go. Every single developer knows that feeling.
But hang on, just for a second. The most successful, most experienced developers out there, they know a secret. And that secret is that the most critical part of building an amazing application, well, it doesn't start with a single line of code. It starts with a plan.
I mean, think about it like this. Would you ever start building a house without a blueprint? No way, right? You'd end up with crooked walls, a roof that leaks, and a foundation so shaky you can never add a second floor. It's the exact same thing with software. A solid plan is your architect's blueprint. It ensures that what you build is strong, stable, and ready for whatever the future throws at it.
So where do we even start with this blueprint? Well, it all kicks off with one simple but super powerful question. What are we actually trying to build here? Before you even think about a file name or a function, you have got to define the absolute core requirements of your app.
You know, for most web apps, it really just comes down to these four big things. Will people need to log in? Okay, that's authentication. Are you going to pull in data from somewhere else? That's your API strategy. How are people going to click and type and interact with your app? Those are your UI components and forms. Getting these figured out on paper first saves you from massive headaches down the road.
And hey, when we're talking about forms, here is a golden rule. Seriously, you always validate on both the client and the server. Validating in the browser, the client side, that's great for the user experience. It gives them instant feedback. But for actual security, you have to do it again on the server. Never ever just trust the data that comes from a user's browser.
All right, next up, let's talk tools. Your tech stack. This stack right here is a fantastic choice. It's simple, it's modern, and it's incredibly powerful. You're just using standard HTML and CSS for the look and feel, and modern vanilla JavaScript for all the logic. No heavy frameworks needed. For data, you can use local storage right in the browser for temporary stuff, and pull in the heavy lifting data from a standard REST API. Deciding on this now means everyone on the team is on the exact same page from day one.
Okay, so we've got our features, we've picked our tools, now we can get into the really cool part, the architecture. And this isn't just about what to name your files and folders. No, this is the logical foundation that holds your entire app together and keeps it from becoming, a tangled mess of spaghetti code.
The number one rule, the guiding principle for any good architecture is this idea: separation of concerns. All it means is that each piece of your application should have one job and only one job. The code that fetches data from an API should have nothing to do with the code that styles a button. This is what prevents that nightmare scenario where you change one tiny thing over here and suddenly 5 completely unrelated things over there just break.
And what this does is it creates this beautiful, clean, one-way street for your data and your logic. It all starts with the UI, right? A user clicks a button, that event gets handled by your application logic. The logic then tells the data layer, hey, I need this information. And finally, the data layer goes and gets it from your API or local storage. See? It's a clean, predictable journey that makes your app so much easier to understand and debug. And this isn't just some abstract idea, right? It directly maps to how you should organize your actual files and folders. Instead of having one monster app.js file that does everything, look at this. We've separated our concerns. Inside the JS folder, API.js, it only talks to the API. Auth.js, it only handles logging in. And all your little reusable UI bits like buttons or modals, they get their own components folder. This kind of organization is absolutely critical for managing a project as it gets bigger.
All right, so we've planned out what we're going to build. Now let's switch gears and talk about how we're going to build it. These are the strategies that pros use to keep their code clean, efficient, and maintainable.
Now, there are a bunch of really smart strategies we could talk about here, like building reusable components or making sure everything is accessible.
But honestly, I want to zero in on the one that is an absolute game changer for building modern web apps, and that is managing your application state centrally.
Just look at this thing. It seems so simple, right? But this little object is the absolute heart of your application. It is your single source of truth. Is a user currently logged in? Is the app loading data from the server? Is there an error we need to show? The answer to every single one of those questions lives right here in this one object. When you need to change something in the UI, you don't hunt through your code. You just update this state object, and your app reacts. It makes everything so much more predictable and easier to fix when things go wrong.
Okay, we have covered a lot of ground. The why, the what, and the how. So now we're at the final piece of the puzzle, your pre-flight checklist. This is the last thing you do to make sure that when you finally open up that code editor, you are totally ready for liftoff. Think of this checklist as your final sanity check. It's your blueprint, turned into an actionable to-do list. Have you created your file and folder structure? Check. Define that core app state object? Check. Mapped out your API calls and validation? Check and check. Once you can confidently tick off all these boxes, you're not just ready to start coding. You are ready to code with focus, with clarity, and with confidence.
So here's the big takeaway from all this. Planning isn't some boring chore that just gets in your way. No, it's the launch pad. It's what lets you build better, faster, and way smarter. With a solid blueprint like this in your hands, you're not just writing code anymore, you're engineering a solution. So the only question left is, what are you going to build first?